Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know. And I want to tell a true story from my history in which symbols were abused. I mentioned symbol abuse in many of my videos, and this is going to be another great story, I hope, with an example to learn from. So consider that sometimes people are tested. In this world, in this life, there are many tests, right? And you can look at it that way if it's not a real test, or maybe it is a real test. Who can say? But sometimes there are trials and tribulations, and you have to get through them somehow. And sometimes people have an interest in things going one way or another, or being interpreted one way or another in the end. So in my example I'm going to tell, my story here, I had an opportunity to make a choice. This was some years ago, I'd say maybe 5 years ago at this time, where I was, living with my family, my wife and my stepdaughter, and her biological son, who did not actually reside with us, but was visiting on an occasion with his girlfriend. We were all together in the house, and it was getting late, and my understanding was, at the time, that my wife had a rule between her and her son that his girlfriend could visit on certain days during certain times, and on this day, the girl was overstaying that time. She was well past what I thought was my wife's rule about it. So I made a comment at one point when there was some back and forth, some dialogue about the situation, and I don't remember everything that was said, but I do remember the reason why I got involved, and it wasn't because of the rule. So pause right there, pause the idea for a second, and I want to go to the idea of a test where somebody might have to display or prove that they are not a hypocrite in a particular way, such as when they make a bold statement about something. For example, and this may or may not be connected, but just yesterday, I made an online comment that I stand by regarding something. It was a question that was asked on Facebook. Somebody asked, what is an example of one habit that a married couple, or a man in particular, might get into to help the marriage, to support the marriage, to keep things running smoothly, and so that everybody's happy and healthy in the marriage. And I suggested that in the case of this person who was asking, that people remember not to be overly controlling by jumping to rules and enforcement of rules and expectations of adhesion to rules. And the words I chose were to resist the temptation to invoke the rules before there's a problem. And I think this is a good practice. And it's not a rule. I didn't present it to this person as a rule, but I think that here's the opportunity for somebody who would test this comment, or test me, I should say, for hypocrisy, if there was such a thing, hypothetically. The test, if there was a hypothetical test that could be done for the comment that I made, to say, if he believes that the rules in the household aren't that important, well, let's see how important they are when the tables are turned. So what if, in the past, the universe, the cosmos, if you will, had tested me and said, here's an opportunity to see if you care about the rules or not. And again, to review, what happened was my wife's biological son and his girlfriend, and he was, he was in his 20s. He was a grown man in his 20s at this time. And I told him that he couldn't be there. I think I was pretty assertive. I gave them like 3 warnings, and then I told them to get out. I said, you can't be here because, my wife said that you have to be here on certain days. And I remember being very surprised. I don't remember everything that was said exactly, but I remember being very surprised that my wife all of a sudden was regarding me as the bad guy, when the rule, such as it was, about what days this girl could be at the house, wasn't even my rule. It was her rule. So this is where it gets, I was at the time very confused about why my wife suddenly did a 180 on me. And now I think I understand, because it was a test. It was a test to see if I get behind rules of the house when it's convenient or helpful to me. And I want to just point one thing out. If this was a test, or if hypothetically a similar test could happen, I was trying to support my wife, which is different than laying down the law of the house. I was not saying that this is the rule. I'm saying that my wife said something to you and you're ignoring it. That's a whole different thing, and I want to be very clear about that. But this would be an example, like I said earlier, of abusing symbols, taking the opportunity to reinterpret a snapshot, which is a symbol, out of context. We're going to say, okay, this looks similar and there's rules involved. We'll just say that it's about the rule, when that's not what it was. It was about my wife having told them to do something, and me being, the head of household at the time, and in support of my wife and whatever she wanted, reinforcing what I believed was her position. Okay, that's different. That's different than trying to lay down rules. I was standing up for my spouse, 100%, and I was not violating my comment that I made yesterday, which, again, for the last time in review, is that married couples can benefit from resisting the temptation to invoke rules or commandments or laws in the house before there's a problem. After, sure, okay. For damage control, for improvement purposes, you can say, yeah, well, now there's a problem, something got broken, somebody got hurt, whatever. There turns out there is a rule about it, and this is going to guide our decisions moving forward. And I was pretty clear in my comment yesterday, but I think somebody just doesn't like that philosophy. I really do. I think that somebody likes to enforce the rules for the sake of enforcing the rules because it conditions behavior. And this is really, it is a basic philosophical difference of opinion. It's one way to look at it. When you enforce the rules for the sake of enforcing the rules, when you say, we're just going to program everybody to act a certain way and basically just do what I say, because I'm the rule maker all the time, doesn't matter if there's a problem or not, that's the position of the person who reinterpreted what happened, if something could be said like that. I have no evidence, but maybe you know what I mean. Then they have control of you. They have control of everything you do. They confine you, and you become an extension of them. And this is my objection. My final objection to this philosophy is you become an extension to a demon versus to yourself. And I honestly believe that every single person, regardless of their age, regardless of their competence, has their own schedule. They have their own priorities, and they don't necessarily, out of hand, need to answer to anybody unless and until there's some violation, there's some problem, some damage outside of a contract, not just arbitrarily because some big asshole says so. And that's the difference. So, anyway, yeah, that's a lot of reading into stuff. I'm not saying it happened. I'm not saying there was a connection. I'm not saying there really was a test, but it's just, one possibility. And people do get tested. Whether or not this was a test, it does happen on occasion. So I hope everybody has a happy, healthy day, happy, healthy relationship with your spouse or lover. And I really hope people aren't rolling the rules out prematurely, because something hasn't happened until it's happened. There hasn't been a crime until there's been a crime. There's no damage unless there's damage. And if you roll those rules out before there's damage, that turns you into a criminal. Absolutely it does. Reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.